This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. And
join the Power Trip Zach Halverson next Monday at Rascals in Apple Valley for a Bud Light Wild Watch Party. Be there at 7 p.m. to watch your Minnesota Wild in action and to sign up for your chance to qualify for first-round playoff tickets this year. Get the full details now at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Now, Kevin Lynch, basketball analyst for FanDuel, is in the 651 Carpets Plus studios, joining 9 to noon. And with the NCAA tournament day 2 beginning, it behooves us to remind you a 10-hour KFAN tournament watch party at Rabbit Hole in Minneapolis is in the air. In fact, Corey Cove is there right now from the wildly successful and highly touted Power Trip Morning Show. Corey Cove there, 11 to 1. Saucy Meat Sauce, Paul Lambert there from 1 until 3. Rabbit Hole, Minneapolis. Parker Fox, 3 to 5. Zach Halverson, 5 to 7. Max Fuller, 7 to 9. And you can register to win big screen TVs and other prizes with the 10-hour KFAN tournament watch party at the Rabbit Hole in Minneapolis. And your listen party continues now with Kevin Lynch joining us in studio. NCAA tournament, do you watch it? Do you, like, how much are you into college basketball, or are you like me where you don't watch much college basketball during the course of the year, but you'll watch more NCAA tournament than you probably thought you would, right?
Well, yeah, I rarely watch college basketball. I didn't grow up. I'm like you. You know, I watched the NBA when I was a kid, and I didn't watch much college hoops back in those days. And then when I was doing the radio for the Gopher basketball team, of course I played there. Yeah. Then I was watching it, and it was for my job, and I was just paying attention. I knew the teams, at least the Big Ten teams.
Who was your Vox? Who was your play-by-play guy?
It was Dave Lee. Mm-hmm. It was Steve Thompson, both those guys with WCCO. Yep. And then I worked with Mike Grimm.
Okay. So you did that for a while.
7 or 8 seasons.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
So, yeah. Did you not know that?
I didn't know that. I knew when you and I called that Wolves-Spurs game together, I knew you hadn't called Wolves games on the radio since working with Chad Hartman in 2009. Was it Chad in 2009?
No, it was Horton.
It was Horton, yeah.
Horton's second year was my first year doing it.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, Alan's done it for quite some time. But the calling college basketball and, going to places you played, West Lafayette, East Lansing, Champaign, things like that. Yeah. It's, is like how much different is like the whole setup and the whole atmosphere and accessibility and media relations related stuff in the Big Ten compared to the NBA?
That's a good question. I mean, it's been a while. Let me say this about, when I was a player in college and going to these places, you're 20 years old. You're just laser focused on your job and trying to get a win, especially back in those days. Big Ten was just full of NBA guys, so it was really good. And so just trying to get a win on the road was not easy. So my focus was all that. And then when I was years later, then I get hired to do the radio. So I'm traveling again to all these places. It was kind of weird going back to, years later now to be, an analyst on the radio. And it was interesting to go back. Yeah. To all these haunts that I was at back in the day. But, that's a good question. They do it pretty well in the Big Ten.
That's what I think. That's what I've heard.
I don't know if it's probably not as similar.
Yeah.
It's not, the NBA is a completely different animal. How much money the NBA's got to put into the meal in the media room, but they do it pretty well in the Big Ten. I know that. It's close.
Now, the game we had the honor of filling in for Alan Horton a couple of Sundays ago. Wolves score a season high 141. Alan calls games from a top section 132. So you're not down by the court.
Right.
It's when I used to, play basketball or was growing up and listening to or watching basketball, they all were like courtside, and I can't even imagine containing my level of excitement if I was down there at the scorer's table calling about. I mean, I liked where we were. And with the National Football League, I'm used to being sections high. I'm racetrack raised, so therefore using the binoculars and calling pretty much every play out binoculars. Yeah. I've done it so long, that's not a problem. But like our vantage point or Alan's vantage point, I think that's pretty cool. It's easy to see things unfurl and the wings fan out on the break and things like that. However, with that said, like if I ever did that job full time, man, I'd beg, borrow, and steal to be at the scorer's table every single game call. Can you imagine well, you did it. You've done it before. How awesome is that?
Yeah, it's to be right down there. There's nothing like it. I mean, and I encourage people when they ask me about what's it like to be in the NBA or play in the NBA or broadcast games. And it's like, I always tell people that instead of like getting seats behind a bench, which can be interesting because you're hearing all the conversations that are going on, I always think like get a seat courtside under one of the baskets, and then you get a chance to be closer to these guys and how big they are and how quickly they move is startling. Yeah, and to be under a basket, you get an idea because some people have this perception: basketball, it's just it's for sissies or they don't play hard, they don't play tough, whatever. But you watch what's happening under a hoop in an NBA, and you'll respect how big, strong, and how quickly these guys move.
Let's take it a step farther. Okay, WNBA. All right, now I'm one that concedes this, much to the chagrin of some local people and those in the WNBA. I didn't watch a lot for a long time. I watched Caitlin Clark play 3 games for Iowa, and then she went to the WNBA, and I got bit. Yeah. So now all of a sudden I'm getting home from the races on Friday night at Canterbury, and I'm flipping on Ion. I'm watching Ion, and it's not Criminal Minds. And I'm watching Seattle and Vegas play. Skylar Diggins against Asia Wilson. And so I got into it. I got bit because of Caitlin, and I stayed. Okay, I concede that. Some people don't like to concede that. Yeah, I concede that. She brought me in. I learned more about the league in totality. I had one opportunity last year to sit courtside for a Lynx game. Same thing. It was against the Liberty, too, in the WNBA Finals. And like Sonia Ionescu and Brianna Stewart, I mean, Sonia's, I don't know how tall she is, 5'10". Sabrina, thank you. Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart. All right. Now, Brianna's not rail thin, but she's kind of thin.
6'4".
Right. Okay. Yeah. And Sabrina, she's not super tall, but rounded shoulder, strong girl. Well, when you're courtside for the WNBA and Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart meet down by the box, and bam, I mean, it's a lot more physical than watching on television. The whole, all of basketball, is the same way. And, when you played for the Charlotte Hornets, you told me a story, a couple of weeks ago when we were getting ready for that game at my house about when you would sit on the bench. I've never forgotten it. You'd sit on the bench for the Hornets, Larry Johnson, Grandmama, Charles Oakley, Oak Tree Oakley, those two would come together underneath the basket, and it was like WWE. What I'm right?
Yeah, it was. That story. So we were playing. This is '93. We're playing the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semis, and so I don't remember who was. We had the ball. We were going to the basket in front of our bench. And
you're in the playoffs.
We're in the playoffs. This is the middle of a heated playoff series. Yeah. And Larry, my teammate, Larry Johnson, gets down to that low block and Oakley's behind him. And I just a couple possessions, I just kind of focused.
Yeah.
I mean, you can picture both of these guys. These are prototypical 1990s power forwards. 6'7", 167 Johnson and Oakley 6'9", sculpted out of granite. Just, I mean, as strong of human beings as you're ever going to find. And these guys are just going at it, and just for positioning. And I was just kind of focusing on watching these two guys battle for position down in that low block. And then it was just literally feet away from me. And it was entertaining. And then there was a timeout at some point, and my teammates come to the bench, and our coaches, I just look at Larry. This is literally seconds after I saw him just wrestling with Oakley. And Larry was just like, he was almost like hyperventilating. He was so emotional, and he had been working so hard because Oakley was absolutely relentless with just smacking him, hitting him, banging him.
Yeah.
It was, I'll never forget that.
Things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So when the last time Indiana won the national championship was 1987.
Yeah.
With Keith Smart, Steve Alford, Dean Garrett. Did you play at Assembly Hall against those guys?
I did. That was my senior year in high school.
Oh, senior.
So they
okay.
won it, and then I came in as a freshman. Alford, I wanted to play against Steve Alford, but he left. But Smart was still there. Dean Garrett was still there. Steve Isle.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Hillerman. I'm forgetting some of the guys' names. Well, that was like Jay Edwards was on that team. He was a freshman. Do you remember these names?
Some of them.
Yeah. So anyways, they were the defending champs when I was a freshman. So, yeah.
Okay, well, here's the point is, in the opening segment, I was wondering how much the portal and NIL has impacted what we're seeing in college basketball. Yeah. And the reason is, and man, I can't remember my guy's name, but he's on a good team and he's a guard. And, when the Vox was talking about him yesterday, middle of the afternoon, he's like, so-and-so went to the Final Four 2 years ago with Florida Atlantic. And I'm like, oh, damn, Florida Atlantic made the Final Four. That's right. But he was on another team last year, and then now he's on this team this year. And I'm just wondering how much long play that's going to impact the Blue Bloods. Okay. And what I'm getting at here is there are more schools here that I could put in. Villanova went in it a couple of times with Jay Wright.
UConn.
UConn's on it. So when I say, the Blue Bloods, all right?
Okay.
You think the likes of North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, UCLA, University of Connecticut, and even like Syracuse. Okay. Now there are others that can go on there for sure. But Kentucky last won the NCAA tournament with Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in 2012.
Wow.
North Carolina last won it in 2017. Duke last won it in 2015. UCLA last won it in 1995. So the Wizard of the Wizard of Westwood, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and that whole thing, it doesn't play anymore. I mean, that's UCLA no longer is a blue blood in college basketball, having not won it since 95. Syracuse, you think Derek Coleman and Carmelo Anthony and Pearl Washington and Rony Cycli and some of these long-standing NBA names.
Yeah.
Syracuse last won the NCAA tournament in 2003. So, but then I got to Indiana, all right? And traditions are everything for some people, and that's totally fine. But tradition with this, I'm just not sure. When Indiana is dubbed by everybody as the state of basketball, the high school level counts, but here's the way I looked at it: the Indiana Hoosiers haven't won. Well, the state of Indiana, but Indiana hasn't won an NCAA tournament in nearly 4 decades. Yeah. Okay, we got to go back to '87. Nobody else from the state of Indiana, Purdue, the aggressive IUPUI, whatever it's called, that whole thing. None of them, Notre Dame. They don't win NCAA tournaments. Now, that doesn't cause you to lose your state of basketball cred. But if you look up and down rosters in the NBA, I mean, there aren't many in the NBA from the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, so now let's go to state of hockey, Minnesota. Okay. Duluth won. It's a lot different because only 16 get to the big tournament, the Frozen Four.
Yeah.
But Duluth's won it 3 times and the Gophers 2 times in the last 4 years. So the state of, and then you look at rosters in the NHL littered with players who grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then, of course, high school hockey, Haiti Dyna, sell out the X, the whole thing. Yeah, state of hockey cred's legit here. But just because James Naismith 100 years ago deemed Indiana the cradle of basketball and like talked about Hoosier hysteria, that whole thing is run cold. There needs to be a new state of basketball. I don't think it's the state of basketball anymore.
Well, some people will they talk about New York City, being a hotbed, and you could talk about
Sweet Pea Daniels.
Yeah, and Rucker Park,
yeah,
right?
Kenny Anderson.
Yeah, all those guys. But before that, Lou Alcindor and others. And there was a story.
Wow.
God, I can't remember the name of this. It was somebody will probably email you about this. There's a resort someplace in upstate New York that Wilt used to go to and play at when he was a young NBA guy.
Yeah.
Lou Alcindor used to go there. Julius Erving used to play there. I wish
It's like Pete Newell's Camp for Centers in New York.
Yeah, but I guess my point is you're right. Indiana's kind of been anointed this hotbed or the birthplace of. Did James Naismith actually say that about the state of Indiana?
Called it the cradle of basketball.
He did.
And Naismith,
he's Canadian.
Naismith, famous for, looking up at the peach basket and recognizing, hey, guys.
Let's cut a hole in that thing.
Yeah, we probably don't need to bring the ladder out after every make. Let's cut the hole out and the ball comes out. It's just zany, some things that happened when sports began.
Right.
Max and I were joking about it earlier. I'm like, who first came up with the idea in hockey that somebody's going to hit a frozen rubber disc 100 miles per hour, and the goalies don't wear masks? Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Dentists went crazy. They made so much money during the Great Depression, it's unbelievable. But also in football, and you and I are about the same age. In football, in the NFL, who decided the goalpost needs to be in the middle of the end zone?
Exactly.
It's the stupidest thing ever. I just don't know how common sense at that stage. It's, a lot of, common sense of all ages can be called into question. But, nevertheless, I just didn't understand that. But he called it the cradle of basketball. And I didn't know James Naismith started the Kansas Jayhawks basketball program. He started that program in 1898. Oh. Then you get like Fog Allen and just immortality-like names there. So Naismith is OG. He developed the first official rules guide. So he came up with, back in 1922, Kevin, that's a wonderful shot. Taking 7 steps to get it, that ain't going to work. So we're going to go ahead and make it 2. So he came up with the rules. But he called Indiana the cradle of basketball. That ain't it anymore, as the kids would say.
Yeah, he invented the game. I know a little bit about this. Because he was a YMCA teacher. He was working at the Y, and it was Springfield, Massachusetts, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was born in Canada.
Yep.
Anyways, he wanted to create a game that was indoors because it was cold out. And that was his kind of first step towards creating the game of basketball, because he wanted to do something inside so his kids could get exercise.
But just think about this. Naismith or whomever hung a peach basket on a backboard. Now, the backboard had to be reconfigured a little bit, but he hung it on something that you could throw it off of, and it went into the peach basket. To actually go more than 5 minutes recognizing we have to climb up and get the ball after every make and not cutting the bottom out immediately. How? I just don't understand how. All right. Speaking of not understanding how, that's been the case with some things with the Minnesota Timberwolves this week. Losers to the Indiana Pacers and the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans and Wolves, Target Center this evening, 7 o'clock. Do battle anew. Kevin and I will talk about the Timberwolves when we return to KFAN.
Wolves fans, you know we don't just talk ball, we live it. And now we're throwing you a full court lot with $15 tickets to select March games. Don't just hear us break it down. Be there. Feel the energy, lose your voice, and howl with us. Use code KFAN with an exclamation point at the end at timberwolves.com/March to get your $15 tickets today. Once again, that code is KFAN exclamation point.
Max.
Hey, what's good, PA?
You know who Jackson McAndrew is?
I've heard the name before.
Okay, so when I describe to you either on or off the microphone, tall, slender guy for Creighton hitting threes, super athletic up and down the court. Like I said, I hadn't watched the Creighton Blue Jays play a basketball game since Benoit Benjamin played there.
I always love that.
Well, I didn't know young Jackson McAndrew is from Wayzata. The guy I was talking about, the tall guy hitting the threes, who hit at least three of them yesterday. My man's from Wayzata.
Oh, dang. Wayzata go crazy.
Yeah. See, somebody tell James Naismith where the true state of basketball originates. Khalid El Amin, Kevin Lynch. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Jackson McAndrew, who knew? All right, with the Minnesota Timberwolves hosting the Pels this evening. Are you on TV tonight?
I am.
Sweet. No Zion Williamson. I'm sure you know that. I believe he's scratched. Zion scratched for sure, right, Max?
Yeah, I believe I saw that on BleacherReport.com.
Nordo said something the day after the game, might have been yesterday. And I didn't, I was writing something down, and it didn't hit me as hard as it should have until I looked later at the standings. And it's like, who's more frustrated winning this game or losing, or who's more frustrated? The Wolves because they lost trying to get out of the play-in, or New Orleans because it's trying to get the most proverbial ping pong balls and get Cooper Flag. And New Orleans, with the worst road record in the NBA, they went all out with McCollum and Zion Williamson, and they won. No Zion tonight. Timberwolves should win this evening, right?
I would think so. But look at Indiana the other night. I mean, it's like four of their five starters didn't play and
ended up being 5 of 5 when Nembhard got tossed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so
they had to play more than half the game with none of their starters.
Yeah, there you go.
Unbelievable.
So the Wolves, I just can't. I was kind of thinking about them this morning. How, I just can't figure them out in a way. It's just. I just wonder if, like, when they traded Towns, you start to, because you look at numbers and where they fall, defensive rating from this year to last year, offensive rating, got all these stats. You can sit and compare the two teams. But sometimes I wonder if, Towns kind of Karl Anthony Towns had a big personality, kind of a happy, big personality. Mm-hmm. And so does Anthony Edwards. And then the rest of the team is kind of pretty reserved personalities.
Yeah.
You take Towns off. You take Towns' personality off this team. You bring in DiVincenzo and Randall, two good players, but the personality dynamic has changed on this team. You got one loud, happy guy in Edwards. You got a lot of reserved personalities, and I kind of wonder
they need Joe Ingles to be good. If like Joe Ingles, well, it's not going to happen at this stage of his career, but if Joe Ingles played a lot, that's a bustling personality right there.
Yeah, my college coach, Clem Haskins, used to talk to me about having a player personality. You can be a certain way off the court, be a nice guy, reserved, but you get on the court, sometimes you need to change your personality. And him and I used to talk about that a little bit. And I just teams can have its own personality too. And sometimes you take a big alpha male like a Karl Anthony Towns off the team, you bring other players on there with different personalities, and it can change. And I think that's a part of Why last year they win 56 games with a chance to be the first seed in the Western Conference until the last game of the season when they lost to Phoenix, and where they are now just at they're eighth in the West. It's a big difference.
Who?
As we approach the playoff/play-in season, obviously everybody's going to be looking at every single team under a microscope. So if you're an opposing team like the Los Angeles Clippers or perhaps the Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, there's a whole various amounts of different opponents the Wolves can have. What would you say are the Wolves' weaknesses right now that you would try to exploit? What's their Achilles heel right now? In my opinion, it would be the ball getting sticky, playing hero ball a little bit too much. But what would you say if you were an opposing team looking to identify what the Wolves' weaknesses are?
Well, the Wolves have been inconsistent, and when the Timberwolves are healthy, I would say one thing that they've struggled with at times, other times it's been good, is transition defense. And you have a slower playing team because you're a bigger team with Gobert and Randall. Naz Reid moves pretty well, but for the most part, you have a larger team, a slower team, and if the Wolves are going to be healthy, I think one thing that is going to be could be a problem is you play fast. You look to run against Minnesota, take advantage of the slower, bigger players, and I think that's something you can kind of attack with the Wolves.
Hey, with speaking of the bigs, so they lose to Indiana. Finchie's on the next morning for his weekly stop into the Covenant, courtesy of Second Harvest Heartland. And we're having our normal chat. Love when Chris joins, man. It's fantastic. And he's harping on rebounding a little bit, talking about what goes into, we just need to rebound better and box out better. And then the collisions and, hey, there's pain with it sometimes. It hurts to do kind of what he was talking about. So I'm like, okay. So I'm going to watch this New Orleans game and remember what Chris said. There was a time in that game where I can't remember. It might have been Stifle, but two Wolves were down there. Ball misses. Here comes something called Eves Missy, flying for what he thought was going to be a rebound dunk. Missed it, bounced high. All right, we got it. Nope. Something called James Robinson Earl comes in and grabs it, goes up for a shot, misses it. Here comes guard Jose Alvarado flying down the key, and he had it, but then it was stolen from him. Let's go the other way. That energy and everything I saw right there was a little bit of a microcosm of the last couple of games where we're just getting outworked by the basket. But how about this? How about this for watch this tonight? Now, no Zion, so the game will be different. But keep this in mind off rebounding. Now, it's just a yes or no questions here. Generally speaking, guards play far away from the basket or generally are not right next to it.
Yes.
Generally speaking, key bigs are relatively close to the basket. Now, you got stretch 3-point shooters, but generally speaking, key bigs are around the basket, right?
Yes.
How about this? In the loss to New Orleans, all guards, Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, C.J. McCollum, and Bruce Brown combined for 22 rebounds. The Timberwolves' key bigs, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, and Naz Reid had 19. They got out-rebounded by Bruce Brown, Jose Alvarado, and Jordan Hawkins. Are you freaking kidding me?
So a lot of times, with the way the NBA's played or basketball, it's not just the NBA maybe, but the NBA, that's what we're talking about here, is so many threes and outside shots are being taken, which is going to lead to long rebounds. That's how it's changed in some ways, is that, long misses lead to long rebounds, and now your guards. That's why, like Anthony Edwards, who's a pretty good rebounder, I always thought, if you're a guard in the NBA, just hang out at the free throw line, and if you play enough minutes, you're going to get 6 rebounds in a game. Just stay at the free throw line because misses tend to go right to their free throw line.
And misses that are held by the bigs, and then somebody swats it away, or it falls out of their hands. And that's a great point. All right, final one for Lynchy. Maxwell Fuller, go on with it.
Lynchy, as we approach the playoff season, obviously you mentioned the Wolves have had a lot of inconsistencies on the court, and also the rotation has been a little bit inconsistent as well, sometimes due to injuries, sometimes due to just Finch not necessarily giving a long leash to some of these younger guys. How often and how much do you think the young guys like the Jalen Clarks and the Dillinghams and the TSJs of the world, how often do you see them playing in the playoffs, and do you see their role being crucial to Wolves' playoff success?
I want to amplify that question and start it tonight, because Julius Randle, after the Pelicans game, was like, last two, we just lack energy. I can't explain it. We've just lacked energy. Guess what? The kids ain't going to lack energy. I mean, they may play willy-nilly and make mistakes that veterans won't make, but they ain't going to lack energy. So that excellent question. Start now with that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. That's a good question, because, with the way the Wolves started the season, the first 2-3 months of this season, just slow starts, lack of energy, and just it was weird. Like I said, Towns is no longer on this team, which I think affected how the Wolves started games. Anyways, then DiVincenzo gets hurt, then Randall gets hurt, then Gobert gets hurt. Now you got Shannon Jr., you got Clark, you got Dillingham coming into games, and even Luka Garza, for that matter, just kind of energizing the game. And like you said, Paul, they'll make mistakes because they're young guys and they got a lot to prove. But, that's something to think about. I think Finch, and it really helped the team, I thought, in many situations when those young guys are playing. So I think there's a chance that those guys in spot duty get some minutes when the energy is low. Put Shannon Jr. in there. Let him just go. And I think that can help. But it's for the most part, it's an older team, more experienced team. And I think that's how Finch is going to go.
Great seeing you. Thanks for helping, and have a good weekend, all right?
Thanks, Paul. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Kevin Lynch from FanDuel, and he'll be on TV tonight with the pre-halftime and the post for Wolves and New Orleans Pelicans. Final segment is next. I should have asked you this off the radio and or on the radio, but and I should know it. I apologize. When you were gone a couple of weeks, where'd you go?
Oof, I don't blame you, because it was 7 countries in 14 days. Started my journey in jolly old London town. Went from there to Tunisia, Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first time.
Northern Africa?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
It was awesome, man. Now I'm at 6 of the 7 continents. Just got to go to Antarctica, and I got all 7 locked up. Went from Tunisia to Malta to Belgium.
You went to the Isle of Malta?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it was amazing.
You say during this journey, you ended up at the Isle of Patmos, which is where the Apostle John wrote the book of Revelation. And the Isle of Patmos is still there, as is the cell the Romans had him in. And you can actually tour it. I've had people tour it and send me pictures and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I would love to go there someday. I've been to the Vatican before, but never been to the island of Patmos.
Yeah, Patmos, I believe.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that one. But
I think it's in the Aegean Sea, maybe. So where else did you go?
I went from Tunisia to Belgium, or I went from Malta to Belgium.
Mm-hmm. Did you ride your bike?
I did not ride my bike, but from Tunisia to Malta, I'm pretty sure I rode on the plane that the Wright brothers first flew. That thing was rickety. It had the propellers on the outside.
Yeah.
I was... the flight was an hour and 15 minutes. Let's just say I said an hour and 10-minute long prayer, though.
Yeah.
Because it was dicey, brother. But yeah, went from Belgium, took a couple day trips to Amsterdam and Luxembourg.
Of course you did.
Of course.
So you're everywhere for 12 hours except Amsterdam. They get 48. I mean, seriously, you talk about good times. Well, that's phenomenal, man. I'm really glad you got to experience all that.
Yeah, it's my life goal to see every country, on this beautiful earth. So
that's great.
I'm at 25.
Thanks for helping today, all right?
Oh, thanks for having me.
Love you, buddy. Love you too. That's young Maxwell. He's Max Fuller. Nordo expected to return Monday. And I'm Paul Allen. Thank you for listening to FM 100.3 KFAN. Don't forget the rabbit hole. 10 hours of KFAN NCAA tournament viewing. Corey Cove is there now, and he's followed by Sauce. Max is there tonight, 7 to 9. You can win big screen TVs. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.